The decline and fall of the Freudian empire. Since we're on the topic of consciousness, and we talked about how research in psychology on the topic took place well before the 1990s, it would be odd not to mention one of the most influential psychologists of all times, Sigmund Freud. Although Freud did not invent the notion of the unconscious mind, he certainly made it popular. Today, his influence continues to be felt in psychiatry, but maybe even more prominently in the humanities, such as literature as well as in pop culture. Given his impact, it is perhaps surprising that Freud is often not taught at all in psychology in many top universities in the world. In many courses of cognitive neuroscience, you will not find any mention of Freud. One reason, of course, is that Freud was not exactly a neuroscientist. He did actually advocate the importance of studying the brain, but the methods were not so widely available in his times. And some modern researchers have linked Freud's ideas to neuroscience findings. But all the same, discussion of Freud is often shunned by many active researchers in both neuroscience and psychology. Although Freud is often harshly criticized, what is clear is that this is not because his ideas were poor. In fact, quite the opposite. His ideas were highly interesting, insightful, stimulating, and they continue to be influential in many areas. The widely acknowledged problem, though, was that Freud and his followers did not take experimental evidence seriously enough. Many of Freud's ideas were based on his own armchair theorizing or his observations of individual patients or family members. When others made attempts to test his ideas, he dismissed them as unnecessary. When his ideas were challenged empirically, he and his followers often resorted to rhetoric or other indirect tactics to respond. Instead of looking carefully into the experimental evidence themselves, they often just wrote it off. The key lesson here is this. In science, ideas matter, but how we evaluate our ideas as scientifically established is more important still. According to Hans Eysenck, Freud's neglect of empirical evidence set the field of psychology back for up to a half a century. This may sound rather harsh, and in fact, some professors, maybe in particular in clinical psychology and psychiatry, may disagree. In the clinic, different treatment approaches often make different assumptions about how the conscious and unconscious minds interact. Some therapists continue to find Freud's ideas inspiring, if not directly applicable. I encourage you to read Eysenck's book on the topic. You can find it from the reference list. Make up your own mind and discuss and debate about this with others. Since this is a course on cognitive neuroscience rather than psychodynamic theories, we will not say much more about Freud. But recall that in the 1990s, many eminent scientists were attracted to the field of consciousness. Often they came from the so-called hard sciences like physics or physiological medicine. Some of them may, unfortunately, not think much of psychology, as they may not realize how much psychology has evolved since the days of Freud. Ironically, some of them ended up getting into the very problem that led to the downfall of Freudian ideas, as we will discuss next.